We had a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and even some in between this Christmas weekend. We're going to talk about the Eagles losing, the Sixers winning their 8th in a row, and the Phillies getting another arm for their bullpen and Craig Kimbrel. We got lots happening on Trending the AM. It starts in 30 seconds.
Holding gets around in front. Joel Embiid and Philadelphia has it.
And a very good morning, everybody, and welcome to Trending in the AM, right here on DSM Media. We're live, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. You know the drill. Like, share, retweet, follow on all social media platforms. But make sure you do us that favor and head over to the DSM Media YouTube page. Hit the like, the subscribe button, turn the notifications on, and get your comments in there. We'd greatly appreciate that. I am your host, Phil Stiefel. I got my man 2 days in a row now, or 2 shows in a row, Mark Moscatelli, joining us today. Make sure you shoot him a follow over there on Twitter. Good morning, Mark. How are you? And are you recovered from Christmas Day yet?
Yes, I am. I'm recovered. Yesterday was a long day. Start early, end late. Went to bed earlier than I normally do. So yeah, my day is done. We had a happy and healthy and fun Christmas, and that's all I can ask for. How about you? How was your Christmas?
Pretty nice, pretty relaxing. I will say, being that I don't have kids and, we don't do a lot on Christmas, I spent some time in the morning with my sister and her kids. Some people, I see people joking about, on Thanksgiving when everyone posts their turkey dinner on social media. Everybody's got a turkey. We don't need to see yours. But when everybody posts their family pictures, their kids opening up presents, I thoroughly enjoy going through all those on social media just to see all the fun and the happiness of the kids and stuff like that. So, you guys had some great pictures from Christmas Eve and Christmas on your Facebook page. So it looked like you had a great time.
Yeah, we did. We did the 7 fishes on Christmas Eve that went over very well. We exchanged some gifts. We had a big dinner at my sister's. My sister made lasagna, and the piece of lasagna that I got, you could use it as a foundation if you were building a brick building. It was so big, but it was so good. My sister's a fantastic cook. She's up there probably. I'm not going to say that she's better than my wife because my wife is a really good cook, but she's in that mix. Definitely overtaking my mom. She's definitely overtaken my mom, and my mom won't be happy to hear that. But the truth is the truth, and she would admit that. So yeah, the meal was good. My sister's a wine connoisseur, and she had this wine that I drank a lot of because I needed it to get through the day. So that was really good.
She would not appreciate my choice in wine from you. If she's a wine connoisseur, I had a big bottle of Paisano.
Sometimes that is the best kind.
That is the absolute best table wine there is right there. It's $15 for a jug. You sit it there. You don't have to worry about sipping. You can drink it.
So did Santa – you said you don't exchange gifts, Phil? Not really?
It was Christmas Eve, and I looked at my wife. I'm like, we don't have any milk and cookies to put out for Santa. And she said, well – he's probably not coming here anyway. I'm like, I got to put something out. So I found some stale cookies in the pantry, and we had some coffee creamer. I put that in a cup, and I put that out on the counter, and Santa didn't come. I guess he didn't want stale cookies and coffee creamer to rinse him down with.
Well, Santa hooked me and my son up. He wanted to go to a Sixers game. We got Sixers tickets. So we're going to go head out to see the Sixers play. I believe that it's the Magic at the end of January. So
see Markelle Fultz.
Yeah, it's going to be hopefully they'll win. I don't see why they wouldn't. Hopefully nobody will be on load management and not be playing because my son will probably be really pissed.
You might be surprised to hear this, but Orlando is actually a red hot team right now.
No kidding.
I don't know the exact. I know they had won 6 in a row recently. I think they're at 7 and 9 games they've won, or 8 of 10, something. Ever since Markelle Fultz came back from his latest injury, Markelle Fultz is average. He's shooting almost 45% from 3. I track my Markelle Fultz. I'm a secret Markelle Fultz fan.
He's not a bad kid. He was just put in the wrong spot.
Wrong time, everything.
And he shouldn't have been drafted anyway because you had Ben Simmons. Like that was a tough deal. And listen, my NBA knowledge, it does not match you or Scotty's NBA knowledge. I do follow the Sixers, and I see some of the things that they're doing. I can't wait to talk a little bit about them a little bit later in the show.
All right, let's do it. So we're talking Eagles, we're talking Sixers, and we're going to bring Phillies into the conversation at the end of the show with their Craig Kimbrel signing. So let's talk Eagles. Heartbreaking, I guess to an extent, loss on Saturday night. I'm actually considering it heartbreaking. I understand the whole backup quarterback situation, but in my opinion, this was the exact same situation from the Washington game. For as bad as we played, we were still right there. That just proves how good this Eagles team is. And the mistakes that happened against Washington were, again, the same type of mistakes that reared their ugly head against Dallas on Christmas Eve. I don't care that it was Gardner Minshew starting. That was a winnable game, and the mistakes by Darius Slay, Quez Watkins, Miles Sanders, just the overall effort of your star players that were there just wasn't up to par. And, to me, I feel if you watched any of the post game or Nick Sirianni leaving the field, how pissed off he looked, that's how I felt on Christmas Eve, because it should have been a win, because Dallas, for as good as they are not on par with the Eagles.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up about Sirianni, because I got blasted on social media that he was one pissed head coach, and he's not pissed. They know what to do and whatnot. I noticed it last week when we talked a little bit about this on the show on Friday, that even though they beat the Bears, they were sloppy. And you could tell by the tone and his inflection of his voice in the locker room post-game speech that he wasn't exactly thrilled. He had, honestly, for periods of that game and in the post-game, he had a look that would melt stone. And I'm glad to see that, because he comes off as a rah-rah type guy with he's always pulling something out his sleeve about to motivate these guys. And it could be a little childish at times in the T-shirt. But when it comes down to you need to do your job, his tone changes, and I think that is a really good sign for this team. Like he's not everybody's friend when you don't have to be their friend, if that makes any sense.
It's kind of like this. So it's something that he holds people accountable, and he doesn't care the situation, your season, anything. Just take that game specifically. Miles Sanders has a huge fumble. And there have been two issues and questions with Miles Sanders his 4-year career so far, whether he could stay healthy and whether he could control fumbles. And deep down inside, I haven't wanted to say it on a show because I didn't want to jinx him. But I kept thinking in my mind, he hasn't fumbled yet. He's been had a clean season. And then last week and then this week, he has 2 crucial fumbles. And then after his fumble this week, guess what? He didn't see the field the rest of the game, because you knew Nick Sirianni was pissed. And the one thing that we've craved from our coaches, from Joe Girardi to Brett Brown to everybody across the board for a long time in Philly, is holding their players accountable. And Nick Sirianni has been doing that. And I think I would not be surprised if you see a hell of a lot less of Quez Watkins next week in New Orleans and more Zach Pascal out there in that slot, which he is more than capable of playing, because he actually holds these guys accountable for mistakes that some of these mistakes these guys are making aren't the other team just making a great play. Quez Watkins, I mean, those were 2 passes that should not have been intercepted. He let those guys take the ball from him. Mm-hmm. That's just lack of concentration, lack of focus on the individual Eagle players. So him holding these guys accountable is something that I really, really appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, Quez had a really bad game, and it's a shame because I liked the guy, and he could play a little bit, but like turnovers were killers. Turnovers. Listen, in the NFL, if you turn over the ball, it's going to be harder for you to win. But we talk about what do you got to do to beat the Eagles because they're so great. Well, you go back to that Washington game and you go back to this game here is get the ball to be turned over, and it's that simple. You have 4 turnovers. Yeah. 4 turnovers that led to 20 points.
Let's talk all 4. The Boston Scott, Gardner Minshew. Minshew got credit for that fumble, but I think that was just as much on Boston Scott.
Well, I think that was more on Scott. Minshew got credited for that?
Yes, he got credited for it.
Oh, that was Scott. Scott did. It was all whatever. Right. I don't know how they scored that stuff.
Boston Scott didn't see the field other than kick returns the rest of the game. Quez Watkins, the first interception, I believe it was, you could make a case that he was interfered with. The guy kind of came over his back to intercept that. But if Quez Watkins comes back to that ball a little bit more or drives to the ball versus letting the ball come to him, that situation doesn't happen. The second interception, same thing. He didn't come to the ball. He gave the defender the opportunity to meet at the point of contact, and he just got out muscled. And then, of course, the Miles Sanders fumble, 100% on Miles Sanders. But that's something that Miles Sanders has had a reputation of doing in the past. And I think that's why I've questioned throughout the year the usage at certain times of Kenneth Gainwell. I really think this organization has had always, no matter how good this season's gone for Miles Sanders, a little doubt in their mind in Miles Sanders. So, those 4 turnovers, each and every one of them were avoidable. Not one of those was a good play. Well, I guess the picks were good plays by defenders, but they were avoidable plays. This was just sloppy play on the team itself.
Yeah, the Watkins ones especially showed his lack of strength, really. I mean, those balls were wrestled away from him. But and it really put him in and honestly, I don't remember the exact situations where they were at on the field. I had a lot of wine to drink yesterday, so I don't remember particularly. But still, I mean, they're drive killers.
My question is, why the amount of targets to Quez Watkins?
That was a 3rd and 4, if I recall, on his second one, and they were driving. Why do you target? I agree. Why did you target him? He had 1 catch for 19 yards.
5 targets on Saturday. Dallas Goedert at 3, and don't give me Dallas Goedert coming back from injury because Dallas Goedert played 97% of the offensive snaps, so he was on the field almost every single play. How does Quez Watkins get more targets than Dallas Goedert?
I don't know, but if it were me and I saw how Devontae Smith was catching everything in his area, I would just keep targeting him. He had maybe one of the best games, if not the best games of his career. The catches he was making, I was just keep chucking it to Smith, man, because he's getting everything.
Or A.J. Brown. I mean, no offense. A.J. Brown had 6 catches for 103 yards, but he only had 8 targets. And I know 8 targets sounds like a lot, but 8 targets when he's averaging 12, 14, 15 targets a game, you don't need 5 targets to Quez Watkins. You just don't. I mean, Quez Watkins should be on the field for one thing, to run deep routes and try to get on the back end of a defense. And if he can't, you don't throw him the ball. That's the only
spread out the coverage. Get them to
He should not be a focal point on 3rd and shorts and 2nd and shorts and a regular target.
He doesn't have to be because you got Brown and Smith. Last year was different because they had Smith and not much else. So I didn't get some of the play calling and the focus on Watkins. So be it. I mean, it especially when after the first ball that was wrestled from him, maybe you think maybe ease up a little bit.
Right.
And that second one was just not great. And the Miles Sanders fumble, I mean, as nice as a season he's having, he is not back next year. And
he's having a great season.
He's having a great season. And he's finally showing his potential on what he was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. He's not going to be back next year. Again, talking about long-term stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And then to Joe, I mean, I thought that was a Boston Scott fumble. I didn't think that was a Gardner fumble. Unless
he got credit, Minshew. But let's talk about Gardner Minshew because, again, Gardner Minshew steps in a tough spot, division on the line, and proved again why having a good, viable backup quarterback is, because even with all those turnovers, we were 20 yards away from taking the lead at the end of the game there. I mean, threw for 355 yards, did throw 2 touchdowns with the 2 interceptions.
He ran for one. He did a Jalen Hurts on 4th down at the goal.
Dude, I watched a lot of other football this weekend. A lot of teams are running that Jalen Hurts, everybody in and push. Everybody's copying that play now that the Eagles run. But Gardner Minshew had expect exactly as you would expect, a very, very viable option. You obviously missed Jalen Hurts on some of the pressure that he was receiving, and he was flushed out a few times and had to throw a few balls away. But Gardner Minshew, if Jalen Hurts can't go next week against New Orleans, I'm pretty sure you would agree with me that I'm confident in Gardner Minshew being back there next week.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, he didn't lose the game for the Eagles. If anything, he kept them in the game. I mean,
I think threw for hilarious comment here. Minshew's pocket presence is 0, but he'll play his ass off. But that's kind of what you want out of your backup. Somebody that'll play their ass off.
But we talked on Friday about keeping his jersey clean and not getting sacked. He didn't get sacked at all on during the game. So he was clean in the pocket. He made the passes when they counted for the most part. He threw over 60%, I think he was. Not awesome, but he was okay. The yardage was there. The scores were there. I mean, there's 2 INTs. I mean, his choices to throw, I think were maybe a little bit questionable. But once, honestly, your wide receiver gets his hand on the ball, it's on the wide receiver. So I think he did fine. And he's probably going to –
Yeah, I think the biggest concern, we're going to be waiting. I know I'm already, like, while you've been talking, I've been refreshing my Twitter already, and I'll be doing it all day today. The biggest concern coming out of the game, offensively speaking, is Lane Johnson. And whether his injury – there's so many rumors. Not one real reporter has said anything. Things from missing the rest of the season to being day-to-day. I mean, it's a wide range of rumors floating around out there. Man, I don't know about you, but losing Lane Johnson for any lengthy period of time, I know Jack Driscoll does a solid job, but there's no way Jack Driscoll's anything close to Lane Johnson. And that might be, if he misses significant time, that would be, I mean, we've had a lot of big injuries this year, but that would be the biggest of them all.
Lane Johnson is a Hall of Fame right tackle who's the best in the game. So it would be a huge loss on any other team. I would say on this team would be still a big loss, but you got Jeff Stoutland. I mean, you have, the entire offensive line being, voted or alternate into the Pro Bowls. You got, I feel like we're in a, not a better situation, but at least we can lean on Jeff and lean on Jack Driscoll, that they're probably going to be a drop-off, but they're going to be a little bit of a pleasant surprise versus if it was any other team with any other backup. So, and that's not to disparage Lane Johnson at all. I just think it speaks volumes on how this team is constructed and how there really isn't any holes anywhere on this team. And I'm worried, but I think we could muscle through for the rest of the season. Now, they said it's a midsection injury, but they really aren't spelling exactly what it is.
Yeah,
if it's a sports hernia, he's done. Yeah. If it's a tear, he's done.
He had an oblique issue, but he was grabbing his groin. So I don't know. Like, he already somewhere in between that oblique and that groin. Is that where the sports hernia comes in? I don't know. I mean, I'm worried. I'm really worried about it.
He had a big wrap around his belly, they said, or in his midsection. Again, like, how do you treat something like that, man?
I don't know. Hey, I work every day with a hernia, so come on, just suck it up and get out there. I've ignored that injury for a year now. Come on now. All right. So Joe brings up something here, and I want to get to this part of it because this is something that's causing some, back and forth on social media. Eagles defense gave up 40, inexcusable. We had Casey had said something before. Gannon needs to bench because you're white because he was bad. I know there were 4 turnovers, and I know 20-plus points were scored on those turnovers. And I know turnovers equal shorter fields. I don't care whether you turn them over 0 times, 4 times, or 10 times. 40 points is 40 points, and that's inexcusable. And the defense did not come to play this week against Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and that entire Cowboys offense. And we haven't seen the defense give up 40 points or give up a lot of points, period, in a long time. I mean, are you concerned that the defense relapsed a little bit into some of their bad habits, or was this just on the radar?
I got blasted again on Twitter and social media, calling out Jonathan Gannon and some of the plays that happened in some of the calls, especially that 3rd and 30 call, which I don't get because they had 2 big sacks.
Yeah.
Honestly, dude, I would have had man coverage and thrown the house at him at 3rd and 30 because you were getting to him. They had 6 sacks. He doesn't want to give up the big play. And what did he do? He gave up the big play because you're dealing with a second string safety, and Slay thought the safety had to play on T.Y. Hilton, who was eating popcorn and drinking beer 2 weeks ago on his couch, and he had that bomb. Like you don't convert on a 3rd and 30.
T.Y. Hilton only was brought in because OBJ wasn't ready. He was like their 3rd choice as like their new. I mean, come on now.
I mean, that play made me really angry, and that harkens back to like when you need a stop the most. When you need to stop he sometimes doesn't come through. And again, it's situational awareness. Like, hey, we need to get these guys off the field, and no, let's just let them play and nickel and dime down the field, and time is going off the clock, and you're not making like those are some of the hallmarks of Gannon's defense that last year, the whole year was like that. This year, you've seen sprinkles in and there. And I think a lot had to do with the rise in talent that they have, where, again, his scheme works a hell of a lot better when Hassan Reddick is getting to the quarterback 14 times for sacks.
So I mean, like in my opinion, when I watched that game, it was the secondary. The run defense was actually not that bad on Saturday.
They did give up 115 yards.
Right, but 41 of them were to that. That's the point I'm getting to. 41 of them were to the quarterback. Okay, and that comes down to so Zeke and Pollard were held in check, and we've seen it now time and time again that this defense, the way they get after the quarterback, there's a lot of open space on this defense because they're not bringing 5, 6, 7 guys a lot, and a lot of quarterbacks, if you're even remotely mobile, are able to break free and get big. Dak Prescott had several big scrambles on Saturday night. And it's not like that's not been a common thing. You could put any quarterback. I think Matt Ryan even rushed for a first down when he was playing against us with the Colts. I mean, everybody is capable of running for a first down. And that's a problem. It's the run defense has been figured out. And Jordan Davis got hurt as well. So that's a shame.
He had a concussion protocol. That might be a problem for next week.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jordan Davis is, since his first injury, I mean, he's basically been disappeared. But, we've got to figure out a way to keep quarterbacks contained when our rush doesn't get home.
Well, and that's the thing, Philly. Like you said, like he's very conservative when it comes to the rush. I mean, aside from Reddick, like he really doesn't blitz. But he excuse me.
Oh, you're okay.
He did blitz. He had Avonte Maddox twice. He had a sack, and then he had Prescott wrapped up. But for some reason, they didn't blow the whistle. They probably should have because he was wrapped up. I don't whatever. And then I think after that play, that's when he got the turf toe, and he was out. And I don't think that helped at all for their defense.
When Maddox goes out, and this is a great question from KC, and it's one, you keep Slay and Bradbury on the outside. Lamb's obviously lining up in the slot only because Maddox isn't there, and you got Josiah Scott there. I mean, why not move Slayer? I know playing out of the slot is different than playing on the outside, but is it really that much different? You have 2 all-pro cornerbacks. Why aren't they one of those guys just shadowing CeeDee Lamb the entire game? No offense to the rest of their wide receivers, but T.Y. Hilton, like you said, coming off the bench. Michael Gallup, he's nothing. Noah Brown is nothing. I mean, it's literally stop CeeDee Lamb and you stop the Cowboys offense. It's so simple.
Lamb had 10 catches for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns.
It's my fault because just like whenever I call somebody out, they go off and I said CeeDee Lamb was below the top 10 level of, top tier wide receivers in the NFL. So it was really my fault that the game.
And we told them when we talked, we made some predictions. I said it was going to be a close game, and you felt it was going to be a shootout. And then I told you if it's going to be a shootout, the Eagles are going to be on the losing end. And then you talk about the spread being 5.5. And the Eagles getting 5.5. How the frig do the bookies know exactly how this is going to lay out? Unbelievable, because a ton of money probably went on the Eagles game, but that's a side point to talk there. And if you looked at the stats of the game, they were evenly matched out. Now, I'm not a huge coulda, shoulda, woulda type of guy, but I'm going to be that way right now. If you just eliminate half of the turnovers and had Jalen Hurts starting, the Eagles whitewashed the Cowboys. They whitewashed the Cowboys, and they
I think you can going away. Eliminate 2 of the turnovers and leave Minshew in there, and we win that game. You take away either of those Quez Watkins interceptions, or you take away the Miles Sanders fumble, the game's over.
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you tell me that when we were down 3 and we got the ball back, what was it, like 2 minutes and 20 seconds, 2 minutes and 40 seconds, whatever it was, before Miles fumbles there, I was 100% confident that we were marching down that field at least tying it up, if not winning that game. There was zero.
No, I felt good about it until the fumble, and I was like, "Damn, here we go again."
Can I ask you a question, a strategy question?
Yeah,
and I said it to my TV. Maybe Melissa was paying attention. Probably not. She doesn't listen when I talk to myself when I'm watching a game. But I said it. I looked at it. So they get the ball back again, even though the Miles Sanders fumble happened. They give up a field goal. They get the ball back again. And they have a big completion to Devontae Smith. And instead of calling their final timeout there with about 30 or 40 seconds left, they clock the ball and then they save their timeout, which only gives them 3 tries to either get a first down or in the end zone, instead of burning that timeout and then having 4 plays to get into that end zone there. I really think Nick Sirianni using a timeout at that moment, or not using the timeout at that moment, may have cost them the end of the game there. Because, again, they had another chance. And Minshew marches them right down the field with Devontae Smith. They're on the 21-yard line. I think it was like 30 or 40 seconds left. And you know what? You saved that timeout, and guess what? You never needed it. You never used it. You should have burned the timeout there. You would have 30 or 40 seconds to get 4 shots at the end zone. I
think they were scared that they were going to somehow be inbounds on one of those plays, and then you're going to be rushing a play and you're not going to be able to execute the way that you want. I think they were playing it a little too conservatively, Phil, with stuff like that. And again, like, you got to go out and just go balls out sometime. Steichen and Sirianni on the offense haven't been as sharp as they were in previous games and earlier in the season. I don't like that. And also, I mean, they weren't sharp 100%. They still put up 34 points with a backup quarterback.
Yeah. So look, we can criticize whatever we want. I mean, it was a backup quarterback. We had turnovers. It was Christmas Eve. Playing on Christmas Eve on the road cannot be an easy thing to do.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Phil, because this was the 3rd straight road game for the Eagles. And again, Christmas, it's exhausting. Late in the season, again, you look at the schedule makers, and I feel like the Eagles are always have a late season 3-game on the road at the most critical time of the season. And it is what it is. Listen, they went 2-1 on that run, so you can't fault them too much. And listen, they weren't going to win every game this season. I would have liked for them to beat Dallas because I can't. Yeah, what do you got?
This was from our opening pre-show when me, you, and Jason did a show, and I said that they were going to go 15-2. This is my win-loss record from that show, and I had 2 losses. I had the Colts game as a loss, which they almost lost, and I had Dallas as a loss, and that was it.
I was with you. I thought they were going to lose the Colts game. I thought they were going to lose the Lions at the home opener.
Yeah.
And they didn't, but it was close, and the Lions turned out to be a pretty decent team.
They blew it this week, but
and they did. I thought they were going to win 11 games, and they've far exceeded my expectations. But here for me, and Jason talked about this. I think with I don't think with football. I think we're talking maybe baseball. No, we're talking basketball. I think, and we wanted to see them lose a few games before they get into the playoffs, get that out of their system. And I think if you want to look at any positives, and you don't want to lose any games, but getting this loss out of their system, clinching, and then you don't have to worry about the game against the Giants, and you can throw some guys in that you haven't seen all season, get a week off, get a reset, and then you start your run. And that's kind of what I put on my Facebook. I have posted.
Do you think that whether Minshew or Hurts starts next week, because there's rumors that Minshew starts again next week against the Saints?
I think he will.
You think what, Minshew will start?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. Are you confident that they can go? I mean, New Orleans isn't a good team, but they are still technically in the playoff hunt in their division and everything. Are you confident that they can lock this up next week? Because they only need one more win, whether it's this week or this upcoming week or the final week of the season, to get that.
Wait, let me check the weather, because they're a dome team. I think it's going to be like 60.
It's going to be like 60, and I think it's going to be rainy next Sunday.
Yeah, 60 and rainy. They're a dome team on the road. Not a great team, not a great coach. Honestly, this game is important 2 ways for the Eagles. 1, to clinch the home field advantage. 2, to better their draft position. So, honestly, Howie's probably going to be in that locker room and say, you guys got to get it done. You have no choice. And I want him to get it out of the way. The last thing I want is them going into the last game of the season, especially the Giants fighting for a playoff berth, and that's why I kind of wanted the Giants to win that game against Minnesota so they can clinch too, so they can, relax a little bit. We don't have to worry about, beating the Giants on the last day of the game, last day of the season, where everybody else is up on our ass. Now, I do think they win going away against the Saints. I think Minshew will start, and I think he's proven that he can get a second start, and you can feel confident with that. And you can give Hurts the rest that he needs, because I think that shoulder injury is a little more serious than what they're leading everybody to believe. So give him as much rest as possible, man.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick pause in the action. Today's show is brought to you by Gents Barber Lounge. Check out one of their 2 great locations, Fishtown and Old City, and book your appointment today. They own the craft and it shows, rated the #1 barbershop on Yelp in the Philadelphia area, able to handle any style cut, adult or kid. Check out some of their great work right here. Gents Barber Rounds right there, Fishtown, Old City. Book your appointment. We are trending in the AM right here on DSM Media. As always, like I keep saying, like, share, comment, subscribe, follow on all social media platforms. But make sure you do that on the YouTube page. I greatly appreciate it. We're talking the Eagles' loss, but I want to transition a little bit as well here, because for as low as we felt on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Sixers play 12 o'clock early. Against the New York Knicks, Madison Square Garden. I was watching the game at my brother-in-law's house, how awesome it would be to see a Sixers-Knicks game at Madison Square Garden. It's got to be a dream to go to MSG like that. I've been there one time. I saw Van Morrison in concert at Madison Square Garden, and that's the only time I've ever been to Madison Square Garden. So that would be a pretty awesome experience there. But Mark, I don't know how much. I know you're busy with family and all. You might not have been watching the game closely, but is it time now? 7-game homestand. They win all 7 games. Then they go on the road on Christmas Day, beat the Knicks, who are always on Christmas Day. 8 in a row for this Sixers team. Is it time for people like me that all they do is complain about this Sixers team to shut up and give this team a little bit of credit? Because finally, the last couple games of this winning streak have been against some really good teams. The Clippers, the Knicks have been red hot. I think the Knicks had a 7 or 8 game winning streak before we beat them yesterday. Is it time for me to just realize that this team is finally getting some time together, finally starting to gel together, and that they're a damn good team?
Nah. Keep being critical. Keep being critical. And I say that kidding around, but there's truth to it. Listen, let's be real honest here. Doc Rivers is not the guy. Doc doesn't want to be here. His lineups are questionable still. He's playing guys like Melton and Milton because Maxey isn't here, and they're actually producing. But if Maxey was here, he wouldn't. Those guys wouldn't see the light of day on the court.
Well, now they're saying that Maxey will be back soon, and they're talking about bringing Tyrese Maxey off the bench, keeping Melton in the starting line.
Stop it, Maxey's one of the best point guards in the league, man. I'm sorry, dude.
I'm pretty sure Doc Rivers specifically said.
I heard this
thing. A rumor that he will be pulling him off the bench at least at first to ease him back into the equation. I mean, I still want to complain about Doc. Because, now this is 2 games in a row. One a national telecast on ESPN ABC and one on NBC Sports Philly, where the announcers, the home announcers and the national announcers, are making jokes about Doc Rivers' all-bench lineup. I mean, it happens every game. There's 4 or 5-minute stretches where he's got 5 bench guys on the floor. And at first, I was complaining. You were complaining. Now the national media and the local, even Ala and Kate Scott, here comes Doc's classic, all bench lineup. I mean, I really feel like Doc this team is winning 8 in a row despite Doc Rivers.
Yeah.
Is that okay to say?
Yeah, because you got players like Embiid and Harden. Harden has actually had a pretty decent stretch. He had 21 assists the other night, 21 points and 10 rebounds. He had triple double. It was a really great game by James, and he had a great game last night. With 13 assists, 29 points, 4 rebounds. I question his fashion sense, but as when he arrived in with that whatever the hell he was wearing,
Maxey off the bench would help the all bench lineups for sure.
Well, KC's point.
He'd find a way to put PJ Tucker and 4 bench guys on instead, or something like that.
Oh yeah, keep giving PJ Tucker minutes. He had 24 minutes yesterday. 6 points. We were going back and forth in the chat box for DSM Media, and Scotty was talking about Tucker, how much he loves him. I said, did he score a basket this year? I mean, he's not scoring any points. What is he doing for the Sixers?
Supposedly providing defensive leadership. They did not look. It might not seem it, but they are I think the number 2 or number 3 top team defensive rating wise across the league. So, I mean, their defense is pretty damn good at this point, the Sixers as a whole. Maxey, when will he be back? Originally, he was supposed to be back before Christmas, and they've kind of delayed it a little bit. I would expect Maxey back within the next 2 or 3 games.
I heard
we're gonna get
sometime this week.
We're going to get to these rumors in a minute. Look, I think there's really something to it when you have James Harden playing close to his former MVP self, when you have Joel Embiid playing at an MVP level, and minus yesterday on Christmas, Tobias Harris has been playing phenomenal, especially in the month of December. I mean, I think going into yesterday, he was close to 60% from deep in the month of December. I mean, the guy's playing his best basketball probably ever in a Sixers uniform right now. The question is, I really truly believe that they're winning despite Doc Rivers. What does that do, you think, to their mental state? Knowing, look, our coach is setting us up for failure, and we've got to do more just to overcome that. I think that pisses them off because they signed off probably on Doc coming back, and now they're probably sitting there thinking, I don't want this guy here.
I think they've been here before with Brett Brown. I do think Sam Cassell has a little bit of influence over these players as well. So maybe he's kind of being the buffer between Doc and the players.
He's playing that Rob Thompson role when Joe Girardi was
Exactly. I think there's a little bit of that going on. And listen, I think it's all Joel. Thank you, Jason. Good to see you too, buddy. I think it's the Joel show, and as he goes, the team goes. He had 35 points yesterday. He's a little low on the rebounds. The guy is. I'm going to tell you right now.
They have a massive problem rebounding the ball, even with 7-2 Joel Embiid, especially on the offense. I'm going to pull up the box score. Felt like they were giving up offensive rebounds left and right yesterday. They have 12 offensive rebounds. They only had 5 offensive rebounds. So that's a problem, obviously that needs to be cleaned up. But I don't know. I mean, honestly, I've said this 100 times on the show. Unless they lose 12 games in a row or going like a 1-14 stretch, Doc's not going anywhere. Whether he wants to be here or not, whether they want him here or not, whether we want him here or not, Doc's not going anywhere. So we can keep complaining as long as Doc is here. I mean, I keep bringing up Matisse Thybulle. I know he's your boy. I know you love Matisse.
He had 4 minutes yesterday and 1 assist. He's been hit or miss.
Go through his minutes over his last 5 or 10 games. He's had multiple double-digit minutes and then multiple 4-minute games. How can you get into a rhythm if you're trying to develop some confidence on the offensive end? He'll always be a really good defensive player. But when you want to gain some confidence on the offensive end, how going 17 minutes to 4 minutes to 7 minutes to 12 minutes to 14 minutes to 7, how is that going to help you when you can't play consistently?
You can't even damn showcase the guy and make him trade bait, because you would think that he could be somebody you could trade for a piece still. I mean, he is still a very, very good defensive player. His offensive game is suspect. The inconsistency, though, troubles me. And again, the all bench lineup troubles me, and it has always troubled me, and it has been his MO his entire career for Doc. He's not going to change. He's going to be Doc Rivers, and I don't think he fits on this team.
I think they need here. He's saying, what could we realistically get from Matisse and Tobias Harris? I went over this.
I don't think you can trade Harris. I don't think you want to trade Harris.
If you're going to make a trade, now's the time to trade Harris while his value's peaking. But the problem is, I went through on a show recently. I hate the NBA trade machine because everybody makes trades, and just because the ESPN trade machine says it's accepted, they think it's a great trade. But it doesn't really take into account what GMs are thinking in the big picture. I tried to find it, and there's no trades that are really out there that move the needle in the positive. Like, you might get some fresh blood in here that may energize or change the locker room dynamic, but it also may hurt the locker room dynamic, because Tobias Harris, for all intents and purposes, he's that quiet leader in the locker room. He's a guy that the young players look up to. He's always been that locker room dad kind of role to an extent, if that makes sense.
This guy, at any point in time since really Harden's arrival, pretty much could have said, even before that, I want out. My minutes are diminishing. My role is abruptly changed, and he hasn't. He's adapted. He has, whatever Doc has asked him to do, he has done. And I can't fault the guy for that. And that's, you want to talk about team players, this guy is the ultimate team player. So it would be really a dick move to trade him after you've asked him to do all these different things and adjust and change, and your minutes change and your role changes. And from a doing the right thing standpoint, I don't want him to be traded. Now, honestly, if they falter to the point where they're not going to make the playoffs or something like that, and that's not going to happen, but honestly, I would trade him for a pick. We have no picks.
I tried putting together a trade package last week for Sadiq Bey, who plays for Detroit. Did he play for Villanova, Sadiq Bey?
He was a Villanova guy. Yes, he was.
I wasn't sure if it was Villanova or Temple. but he's a guy that's like he's being wasted in Detroit. He's got a lot of potential. And I tried to put together a trade package, and I messaged my boy, Jason Sullivan from Fairway to Heaven, my golf podcast partner, and because he's a Detroit guy and he's a big Pistons fan. And I'm like, would this trade work? And basically it was Matisse Thybulle. And I forget whether I put Furkan or I put some bench guys in there to balance the money. And he's like, well, I put Jaden Springer because he's not really getting any playing time here, and he's young and he's like a first round pick. He's like, you would need to include another first round pick. I'm like, well, we don't own a first round pick till 2029 that we are allowed to trade, because you're not allowed in the NBA. You can't trade certain amount of picks in a row. You have to keep at least one of them. So we are not allowed to trade a first round pick till 2029. Is that really enticing to another team? Not really.
No. Well, why would I take a pick 6 years out? And that's what I'm talking about. Like we
Sadiq Bey's a guy that would actually maybe intrigue this team and help this team, but you don't have a team like Detroit is just looking for more picks. They're not looking for players. You know what I mean? So I've seen some people talk about, because we played the Clippers on Friday, a bunch of people wanting Robert Covington to come back as a bench.
There was a Robert Covington sighting against the Clippers. Me and my boys went crazy, man. We love that guy.
He's you know what? Nowadays, in his veteran role coming off the bench, he can kind of play that role that Andre Iguodala played later in his career for the Golden State Warriors. The veteran 3-and-D guy that could go 3 games not playing and then 3 games be coming off your bench as an important piece. And you might be able to get him damn cheap because he's not getting any playing time in LA. I would be okay with that. But obviously, the real rumors from this weekend, and I know a couple people said it, where some of them, not buying the BS James Harden rumors. Obviously, it actually started Friday, and it didn't really pick up much steam, the rumors, because it was like a low-level reporter that reported it, and then Adrian Wojnarowski
picked it up.
Woj picked it up on Sunday right before tip-off, and James Harden was literally asked about it like 10 minutes before the game. Rumors that he will consider going back to Houston in the offseason, in free agency, if he doesn't stay here. And I claim BS. I claim bogus, because unless we win a title, James Harden is not going to go back to a team that's winning 10 games, 12 games in a season, because he wants that title. But more importantly, the ESPN reporters, and I forget which person was working the sideline Sunday for that asked him that right before 10 minutes before tip, bringing up a rumor like that to a player that's about to play a basketball game. That in and of itself is a bogus thing to do as a reporter. But I don't buy these reports at all. He unless we win a title, Mark, he's not leaving, or he's not leaving for Houston, in my opinion.
I'm curious that the pressure to win a title, is that something that he's not accustomed to? I mean, I would think that a lot of the pressure is off him because you have Embiid. Embiid is the guy. But I mean,
hold on. He actually has said in the past, before even Brooklyn, he didn't want that. He wanted to be the number 2 or number 3 guy. So he likes being here because he is not the number 1 guy.
Yeah, but he's still the number 2 guy, and he's in Philadelphia. He's not in Houston anymore. He's not in Oklahoma City. Brooklyn plays second fiddle. I don't care what you say to the Knicks. So he could kind of be a little bit under the radar. I got to be honest with you. Him being number 2 here is like being number 1 in any other market. So maybe the pressure is there a little bit.
Do you buy then that the rumors are potentially true that he'd want to go back to Houston?
I think he would do the Sixers a favor if he did win a title or not.
That's another whole conversation.
I think he does it, and that's why I kind of leave well enough alone. I mean, if that's what he wants, that's what he wants. You're further solidifying us not, doing a full court press on an extension. We go find somebody else out there. And listen, who isn't going to play with Joel Embiid? Who doesn't want to play for a team that is constantly at the top of the conference rankings? Like, I don't care. You have a very attractive team to come to.
Is it attractive, though? Because no matter how great Embiid has been, this team has come up short. And I'm not trying to bring the Joel Embiid conversation back into it, whether he's that guy or not. but it's been like Ben
Listen,
Simmons.
man, why did they come up? Why did they come up short last season? He got his face broken in half by Siakam. I mean, come on. And then you could say like, oh, he's always hurt. What's that?
I said Siakam's still making those dirty plays. If you
Yeah.
watched the Toronto game the other night, he's still pushing off and throwing his elbows around.
Yeah. So I mean, like you say, well, Embiid's injury prone. I mean, come on, man. Like how often do you get your face hit? I'd be more concerned about his feet, his knees, and his back. And he does have them from time to time, but like he's having a phenomenal season again. And I've said this, and I get blasted on social media. He is the best player in basketball for 3 seasons running now. He is. I don't care what your MVPs say. He should be going back to back to back MVPs right now, the way he's been playing. I love the guy. There's some talk like they should trade him or he's not happy here and he's going to ask for a trade. I just think that's preposterous. I don't think that is true. But from a Harden standpoint, listen, he's on the downside of his career. He's not the guy that was in Houston. He just isn't. He's not the MVP that he was before. I think you use him for what you need him for this season on this run. And if he wants to go play in Houston after this season and opt out, then bye-bye. See you later. You're going to do us a favor. You're going to free up some space, and then you can do other things. I don't know what those other things are.
I'm looking at the Sixers schedule here. And starting January 14th, they've got a 5-game West Coast trip. But before that, January 14th, they've got 9 games to play. And let me tell you something. We have won 8 in a row. There's a chance we win out of these next 9 games, 7 or 8 of them. And there's a chance that this Sixers team has gone on a 15-1, 14-2 stretch. I mean, it's pretty this schedule. I mean, we talk about scheduling and the craziness of schedules in football and basketball. I mean, we got Washington Tuesday night, then we go to New Orleans. New Orleans is playing great basketball. Zion Williamson and that team's playing great right now. But then we got Oklahoma City, who's terrible. New Orleans at home. So you would think we'd win one of those 2 New Orleans games. The Pacers are falling back down to earth. Bulls are a train wreck. They're having team meetings. They're bringing in people to sit down with Zach LaVine and DeRozan because they can't get along. You got Detroit twice, and you got Oklahoma City again. I mean, there's a legit chance that this win streak and this stretch goes pretty far for the Sixers. And we're mid-January, and they might be right back to near the top of the conference. It's crazy to think.
I mean, they're about, what, 6 games off now? I mean,
the Sixers are only 3 games out of the first place in the conference, I think.
3 games?
No, they're 3. Yeah, they're 3 games from behind number 1 Boston right now.
Again, there's a log jam up top, and that was the same.
The Bucks are 1.5 back. The Cavs are 2 back. The Nets are 2.5, and we're 3. We're 4 games back in the win column on Boston. So it's pretty tight at the top of the Eastern Conference.
And that's a fear too. Like you're going to try to fight your way out of the conference, and if the Sixers do, it's going to be really hard on the team. And let's just say they get to the finals. What happens in the finals, and who are they playing in the finals?
Absolutely good. That's why this stretch, when you've already just won 8 in a row,
get
you've
the
got
wins
9
now.
really easy schedule. Get some W's now.
Yeah,
it's going to get tougher. All right, we got a little bit of time left. I want to jump real quick. Friday night, I was actually going to jump on and do a live show Friday night just because it was interesting news to me. I brought up a few times in the last week or so, have the Phillies done enough? You know, with the Trey Turner signing, and you haven't done a lot of shows, so I don't even know your thoughts on all of the offseason of the Phillies. But Friday night, it came out that they signed Craig Kimbrel, former All-Star elite closer, to a 1-year, $10 million deal. Now, everybody sees the name Kimbrel, and they think that they're getting 2012 or 2014, Cy Young candidate, Craig Kimbrel. He wasn't bad last year with the Dodgers. Not great, but not bad last year with the Dodgers. But the previous couple years before that, he's been pretty washed for a good 2 or 3 year stretch. Is bringing in Craig Kimbrel on a $10 million deal a good thing? Good choice from Dave Dombrowski.
Low risk, high reward. It's similar to the Knebel deal last year. Yeah, and yeah, that's what I just said, dude.
I mean,
Great minds, my friend. Great minds.
think about it. The amount of money we spent on,
What-
on Knebel last year, or David Robertson 2 or 3 years ago when he didn't play but one inning for us. I mean, $10 million. I mean, you think about, did you know who Matt Strom was when we signed him to a 2-year deal?
These guys are all dime a dozen.
Yeah, he signed a 2-year, $15 million deal, $7.5 million a year. You got Craig Kimbrel, a known commodity. Maybe he's got something left in the tank for $10 million. It's such a smart
Like,
risk, right?
I saw on social media how people were so excited that they finally they signed him. I'm like, no, they should have signed him 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it's a different story, but they didn't. He's got a peculiar stance and wind up, and I'm curious to see how that plays, especially if he blows a game or two. And I think his ERA was in the high threes last season.
3.65.
Okay. If
3.75.
are they going to use him to close?
That's what I was questioning. So it's not just that he had an okay ERA last year. It's he gave up a lot of base runners. He had a 1.31 WHIP last year because he gave up 60 innings, 51 hits, and 28 walks. So he was giving up a ton of base
lot, man.
So the question is, do you close? So you saw down the stretch and then in the playoffs, Rob Thompson used the different, like sometimes Alvarado in the 6th, sometimes he was closing. You use Sir Anthony in the 8th, sometimes in the 9th, sometimes 2 innings. Is this just another piece for Rob Thompson to continue that new philosophy of using high leverage guys in high situations and then having someone else that could close later on if necessary? Is this a situation where Alvarado, Sir Anthony, Craig Kimbrel, and I'm going to say it now, I think Connor Brogdon in the playoffs earned the right to be in that top 4 part of the bullpen? Those 4 guys, that any 4 of them can come in the 6th and any 4 of them can come in the 9th? Or do you just say Craig Kimbrel, because he's a borderline Hall of Fame player, you get the 9th to start the season, the other guys pitch whatever high leverage situation there is, and then if he falters even a little bit, then you could pull him? I don't know which way I'd go, but I would probably stick to what Rob has done the last month or two of the season and just roll with that. Use them in whatever matchup situation works.
I think your baseball players perform best when they know what their role is every night. And if you got a guy like Alvarado, some games he's in the 6th, some games he's closing, like you don't know what your role is. A guy like Kimbrel, I don't think I don't think you move him around. Like I think hey man, you're going to be the 8th inning guy or you're going to be the closer. I think that is what the expectation is for this type of player with this type of pedigree, even though he's not the same Kimbrel as he was 5 or 10 years ago. Listen, I like the signing, but I also equate it to what they did with Knebel last year.
Right.
And I do think, to your point, like some of the guys that were on the roster that stepped up in the playoffs, Bilotti's one of the other guys. Yeah. I don't know if he's a free agent or if he's inked for this year.
I'm not sure if he's inked yet or not. He's a guy I would bring back. But so I agree with you. I've always been a guy where the bullpen pieces need to know their role. And I think the style that Rob Thompson managed the bullpen with in the playoffs is okay in the playoffs, but I don't think that can work long-term over the season because they do need to know their role. They do need to know when they're pitching and when they're not pitching and all. So I think you probably roll with Jason saying that he thinks Sir Anthony will be closing and Kimbrel will be the setup. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with going Kimbrel in the 8th and Sir Anthony in the 9th, or even Kimbrel in the 7th or 8th and Alvarado in the 7th or 8th. Your setup man can go 7th or 8th inning technically, based off of the team, based off of the matchup, and that you make Sir Anthony your lockdown, no doubt about it, closer for the year, at least to start the season.
And what they were doing towards the end of the year and in the playoffs, they were stretching these guys out 2 innings. And I don't think that is just not – there's not a lot of that still happens in baseball on a regular basis, but they were kind of more or less forced to do that and go with the guys that they can
rely on. I think they were forced to do that also because they didn't have a 4th pitcher in their rotation. So they had bullpen games. So they had to stretch guys out further in the bullpen for those games. And also, I think having Taiwan Walker, as your 4 starter now and adding Kimbrel, I think that they're set up for pretty much success. I still don't think they're done. I still think there's another move to be made this offseason. What it is, I don't know. Whether it's trading Hoskins, whether it's trading Bohm. I know there's a lot of rumors about Rafael Devers or however you say his name.
Yeah, and he's a third baseman.
Third baseman. I mean, it will cost you one of your top pitching prospects, either Bohm or Hoskins.
I don't want to give up those pitchers. I'm sorry, dude. I don't want to give up those pitchers. I would be. I would not want to give up Bohm at all.
At this point, would you say
Hoskins? I might, if the deal is right.
At this point, would you say the Phillies have done enough to compete with the Mets? Do you see Carlos Correa might have more issues now with the Mets to another deal?
Well, apparently he snapped his ankle. I don't know much about his injury history, but he's got plates in his ankle, and he failed a physical with the Giants. Was the physical going to be any different a week later with the Mets? Like, why would you offer that money? Like,
I don't know what's going on.
You know what? The team that made out the best here? The Twins. Thank God he opted out of his contract. Hey, I'm out. So
my hands are washed. Yeah,
exactly. And I don't know what kind of season he had last year. I think he had a pretty decent season. Yeah. He definitely didn't want to play in Minnesota, so that's why he opted out. But he probably should have had a physical before he opted out of that contract. So, and the dipshit owner of the Mets, who's spending money like a drunken sailor on whores, came out and basically acknowledged that they signed him. And Major League Baseball may want to hold him to it now. Now you have to sign that long-term deal, even though you had a failed physical. And maybe this year, next year, it doesn't play out and the Mets can ball with him. But that leg sounds to me like it's not stable and it's deteriorating.
Dude, that's a crazy situation going on there.
God, I thought our owner was big on spending money. This dude's out of control. And what's happening now is I think Major League Baseball has to do something about this because honestly probably has to be like a full cap somewhere and a revenue share somewhere.
So here's the thing. If you get Devers, I don't know how you say it exactly. You're trading. If you can get him without Painter, I'll give up McAble. I'll give up McGreary. I'll give up Bohm or Hoskins, whatever. I'll give up guys as long as it's not Painter. You have to say you're only doing that if you get a pre-approved extension. He's due for a huge pay upgrade, and based off of what some of these guys are getting, he's going to get another $300 million contract. Plus, will the Phillies go to that level like the Mets are? I mean, the Mets are going to have over $100 million in luxury tax money. That their bill, their luxury tax bill will be over $100 million. Now, I know Middleton doesn't mind spending, but is he going to spend that much? I don't know.
Here's my concern is you get all these guys signed to these long-term contracts that have no trade clauses and they got 13-year deals or however long the deals are. These guys falter or they're not as advertised. You're stuck with them.
Yeah,
you're stuck with these guys. You have to have some flexibility in your lineup and your roster. I know Dombrowski is a win now guy and go with the veterans type guy and doesn't develop farm systems as well as the next general manager. But you can't have $200 million players at every position. And I know I'm sounding like
if you want to pay for it.
I mean, that was part of the reasoning why they let Jason Worth go is like you can't have $100 million players at every position. And as unpopular as it may sound, I think you're right because you don't know what the future holds. And if you're locked into a lot of these guys for 13 years and $300 million and whatnot, and they are constantly hurt or don't perform, you are screwed. you are screwed, and you don't want to get to that point. You want to have some flexibility with your roster. I don't think we have. I think we have flexibility with our roster, but it's slowly not getting that way. And like you got to have some players that develop, and Alec Boehm is one of those players that I do think I think he can be a 300 hitter, 200 hits type of guy. Yeah, he led the team in hits this year.
Yeah, I think he could be a 300 guy for sure. 200 hits. That's tough nowadays to get 200 hits. I bet you there's not many that do that very often anymore. But yeah, I agree that he could be a 300 guy. But I do also agree that Rafael Devers is a top 15 player. I mean, he's that good.
All right, dude. He's a top 15 player. Who's it? He's with the Dodgers, right?
He's with the Red Sox.
I'm sorry, the Red Sox? Okay.
Yeah.
We're not thinking the Dodgers. Well, so why do they want to get rid of him? And they've already failed by trading Mookie Betts.
They don't want to pay him, is what it is, I think.
Since when does Boston not want to pay players?
It seems to be the new deal that Boston doesn't want to pay players anymore. So I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with that. We're going to wrap up the show here, though. We're already into 5 minutes.
You get me fired up now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. We didn't spend enough time.
Come on, we can go another hour, brother.
I don't think the wife would appreciate that. So I got to open up the shop. So what's up, my man, Joe? Thanks for checking in, my man. But we're wrapping up here, Trending in the AM, right here on DSM Media. Again, make sure you like and follow on all social media platforms. Subscribe to the DSM Media YouTube page and turn those notifications on. We greatly appreciate that. I am your host, Phil Stiefel. We had Mark Moscatelli sitting in here next to me. He'll be back next Monday for sure. And we'll be back tomorrow morning with another show. Talk more Eagles, talk more Sixers, talk more Phillies maybe. Maybe Mark will send me some more messages and tell me how fired up he is, and I'll have some more conversation there. Everybody have a great day. Thank you very much. I hope you all had a great Christmas. And we'll be back tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Is it Go Birds or is it Go Six? It's Go everything.
Go Birds. Go Birds.
Go Birds. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
And Philadelphia has it.